So in my complaint letter, I thoroughly outlined that I did not want to be on Seroquel XR, and they put me on it anyway, and they tapered me up to 500 milligrams a day, and they're intending to go up to 800 milligrams a day. When before, if I was in the psych ward, they gave me Seroquel quick release, which are just 25 milligram pills, and I don't think they ever gave me more than 2 or 3 at a time, usually maximum 2. So if it's 2, 3 times a day or something like that, that's maximum 150 milligrams. And I was off the Seroquel by the time I left the psych ward, or 2 days after, which is maximum 10 days. And I was in the hospital and on Seroquel for 33 days, plus another month to finish tapering off of it in the community, because I was tapered up to 500 milligrams of this Seroquel before I was able to switch doctors, and then she tapered me off because she listened to me, whereas the first doctor refused to listen to me in not putting me on that stuff in the first place. And then I said, consult with this other doctor, they know what to do to help me. They wouldn't do that. So regarding the Seroquel thing, they put 1, prescribed Seroquel when you did not want to receive this medication. The doctor prescribed this medication as you had previously been on Seroquel without documented ill effect. Other antipsychotics had caused side effects and therefore not prescribed. And that wasn't even the point. Regarding not being transferred to the doctor that I know right away, they say the admitting psychiatrist keeps you unless there's a compelling reason to do otherwise. Well, in my mind, I gave some compelling reasons. The other doctor knew how to help me. She'd helped me twice before, and for some reason, this wasn't good enough. And they did sort of address it. They said, you're concerned regarding not being listened to regarding your treatment and what had worked in the past. We sincerely apologize that this was your experience during your care with Dr. X. We value the voice of the patient and want to incorporate this whenever possible. And I asked if advance directives would be valued, and it says, where possible, advance directives and representational agreements will be followed in cases where an individual is admitted involuntarily under the Mental Health Act and the psychiatric presentation warrants it. The psychiatric components in an advance directive or a representational agreement may not be followed as expressed. So that is the news about getting that document written up, is it won't necessarily be listened to. So note to self, never go to the psych ward. And it says, do people have a choice of the psychiatrist they see when they go to the IPU? And it says they see the admitting psychiatrist. And it says this is our current practice, which can be reviewed in the future. Well, I think some of these practices need to be under review, or just have a completely different practice. So yeah, they kind of addressed it when they said didn't listen to regarding what helped in the past, but not completely, because the point was missed that I was drugged up with the intention of being drugged up for the long term with a doctor that didn't even know me, but was just going to put me on this completely different trajectory that she decided after knowing me for 10 minutes and alter my life. And I knew otherwise, and they didn't listen. So I would not put myself in that place ever again to be, I don't know. I really hope this coming off medication thing works, because, and not just coming off and kind of staying stable and quiet, but having some energy and some mental strength to change some of these things, because it's total crap. And it talks about how I had to call conflict of interest to have the doctor switched, and I was admitted on April 5th and I was switched on April 7th. But the damage was already done. Within 2 days, I was already on 500 milligrams of Seroquel slow release. And then I didn't even ask to be tapered off of it right away. I might have waited a day or so. So within 3 days, there was so much work to do to come off of that crap, and so much scary stuff in the meantime. It was so scary and terrifying. So, I don't know. Maybe it's not just that. Maybe it's just something that had to happen, but I guess part of it is not having to go through that kind of thing again. So between driving around with this car stuff and this letter, things have been a little bit stressful, so I need to also relax. So maybe I'll do a little bit of editing and see where I'm at. I have 3 books on the go right now, so I have some other stuff to cover. Actually, I have 4 books on the go. I'm reading Wholeness in the Implicate Order, The Man Who Wasn't There, Journey to Ixtlan by Carlos Castaneda, and Stealing Fire by Stephen Kotler and Jamie Wheel. And I'm just waiting for my brain twin to get here, so maybe I'll just talk about just a little more things. In the book Stealing Fire, there was a line that says, the upper range of human experience. And that made me extrapolate that some of these altered states that often end up being deemed mental illness are also the upper range of human experience. And they were talking about SEAL training, Navy SEAL training, and how it is a filtration system in terms of finding the right people to be trained for that position. And that made me think of how MAP, how trans consciousness, how altered states, in a way, is a filtration system. It's almost filtering who can stand in those states. It's putting our consciousness into a different state and seeing who will filter through. So in a way, it could be that evolution is partly a filter, not really a selection. There's nothing there doing the selecting. There's no ultimate thing selecting this or that as evolution goes on, but in a way it's a filter. It's filtering the organisms through the environment. And as the environment changes, the filter changes for who goes through in terms of different organisms. And the human brain, in a way, needs to change in order to filter through not just this environment, but in order to create a new environment that will be sustainable for human brains. So I feel like, in a way, MAP consciousness is training by Gaia and the universe to adapt to these new brain states that are necessary. It's almost like there's so many different experiences and altered states happening, just like there's a lot of different mutations happening and a lot of different things, but not all of them go somewhere. But something will go somewhere eventually. So in a way, it's not a test either, it's a filter. It's like waves crashing ashore. It's like a tide. Our brains go into these altered states and these non-ordinary states, and then we come back like a wave, like the tide coming in. So our brains go into those states and go into those states, but we eventually do come ashore. And they talked about how in Google, they were looking for a CEO, and they gave them a Navy SEAL-like test to find the right CEO for Google quite a few years ago now. And I think the universe is testing our brains in a way too, and selecting for wisdom. And I remember Dr. Alberto Vitiello said, nature selects for wisdom. So I think it puts us in these wisdom states, these states beyond just logic and reason, to start to try to select for that wisdom. And by getting with those states and seeing and creating with that, we can create what that wisdom is trying to create. It's definitely not trying to create mental patience, but that's what human beings who don't have that wisdom or any understanding turn us into. And so in a way, the masses are the environment. So we as brains that go into these non-ordinary states, or these wisdom harvesting, meaning harvesting states, have to bring back enough meaning to change how the masses respond to us. And that's in a way because they are the environment that we're received by. When we're coming back, the wave is on the ebb. There's the ebb and the flow, and when we're on the ebb, we're in danger of being captured by the masses. So just as people are testing who can be Navy SEALs, the universe is testing who can carry this meaning into some kind of something. I don't know what. And it's also seeing if life can trust us. Life is trying to see if it can trust us. And they talked about STER, which is 4 qualities of non-ordinary states, which was selflessness, timelessness, effortlessness, and richness. And I've talked about richness in terms of meaning. There's this inner richness when there is no time, and there is no self as the me, and there's no effort. And so in a way, our state is usually so ordinary. I turned it around and I say our state is usually so ordinary and mediocre because we have a self, or we feel a self, or we operate from a self. We're always putting in a lot of effort, and we think in terms of time, of being better. So in a way, the self and time and effort are all the same thing. I feel like Krishnamurti would say those are all the same thing, because it's the me that makes effort to be better. So the me is the effort. There's no me aside from the effort. There's no self aside from effort. And time, well, effort implies time because it takes time to change or to get better. No richness. So they talk about selfless, effortless, timeless, and richness. So the richness is the only one that isn't less, because it's selfless, timeless, effortless. So if you subtract the self and time and effort, then there's richness. So if there's richness, in a way, there's no self and there's no time and there's no effort. So I think richness equals negative self minus effort minus time. But those 3 things are all the same in a way. So if you can rid yourself of any of those things, then you may come upon the richness. So our states are so ordinary because we've been conditioned to have a self, make effort, live by time, feel rich. And I feel like the self is a manifestation of society. It's what we need to navigate society. So what would be a manifestation of Gaia? When we think about the sphere of society, it's very narrow compared to the sphere of Gaia. So society, being lost in that, denies the richness of Gaia. To be continued.